Welcome to the Squint Podcast. Today we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Laura Koniver, the intuition physician. Laura transitioned from a conventional career in medicine to a more holistic, intuitive approach to health and healing. Her new approach blends modern medicine with intuitive insights, including how our body functions on an electrical level, grounded to the earth. Unfortunately, we are losing our connection to the earth, to the very current that drives our health. We love Laura and had such a great time speaking with her on this podcast. She is the ultimate squinter and embraces our favorite Squintessentials, the sun and grounding together. Let's take a squint. So, welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me. Sure, 100%. I totally align with your core message of sun and earth. So I'm so excited to be here.
Great. We're thrilled to have you. So before we get in, just for our maybe some new followers that are just getting up to speed on grounding, can you just do a very general definition for us?
Of what grounding is?
Yes.
Yeah, so simple. It is literally just connecting to the earth directly, not in an esoteric way, physically. This is a physical science. This is a medically reproducible healing modality of literally touching the earth. So there's lots of different ways you can do that, but the most simple is direct contact. Your skin touching the earth outside or something living on the earth outside, like a tree that's growing out of the earth. But grounding, all that means is direct contact, our bodies and the earth. But there's so many different ways that you can play around with it. There's different ways that you can now ground indoors, and we can talk about some of those easy ways to get grounded, no matter where you live in a city. If you don't have a yard, if you don't have a greenway. But every time we're talking about grounding, we're not talking about just some esoteric thing. We are literally saying my physical human body is in some way connected directly to the earth.
And this is a dermal connection. So our skin, anywhere, our hands and feet, at anything, any piece of skin that is connected to the earth.
And the only reason it's skin is because that's our coating, but really every organ system and every tissue we have besides hair, which is dry and it's insulatory, it's, dead keratinocytes. So it's protein. So our hair, you can't ground through, but anything that's damp, moist, every cell in your body, muscles, it's just, that's not our outer coating, but your bloodstream is grounding like that. Your muscles are grounding like that. Your brain, your cerebrospinal fluid, your kidneys, anything, your GI tract. But what we can touch and what is also conducted is our entire coating inside and out. So that we say skin contact, but really literally your entire body, one cell in it being grounded, you're grounded from head to toe, your entire body instantly.
Amazing. And we are so vigilant about plugging in our phones, but we're a lot less vigilant about plugging in our own bodies. And the fact is that we are electrical beings and we need this unlimited supply of electrons from the earth to fuel our body, our mitochondria, to do what it needs to do.
Right. It's weird because, in our country especially, there's literal codes that you have to have your building be grounded to protect the appliances, like you're mentioning with cell phones and stuff. You have to have your water tank grounded. Your refrigerator has to be grounded. Your washer dryer has to be grounded for its safety, but we don't have any health standards but we're a closed functioning electrical system. Our heart is, our brain is, even our muscle contractions, speech, blinking, memories, all of it's electrical. And so we have no safety parameters put into place to make sure our electrical body stays safe, but we do for our appliances. So it's just very backwards.
It is. It's amazing. And speaking of, I want to talk about issues that really matter to people and how grounding can make an impact on those issues. So things we talk about, we talk a lot about sleep at Squint. We talk a lot about, mental health, anxiety. So let's start with anxiety first, because I'd love to hear more about the studies of how people who connect to earth, who incorporate grounding into their everyday life, are experiencing more success in their mental health outcomes.
Okay. Yeah. There are so many studies. Try and remember, recall them all and break them down really simply. You can go as basic as there's double-blinded studies showing people who are grounded have a boost in mood. So just that simple, just being grounded. Most of the studies look at a 30-minute to an hour-long period of time, and that it statistically significantly boosts mood. And how we can get these medical studies to be double-blinded, gold standard, real medical studies, instead of just like, I went outside and I think I feel better, because who would, that's multifactorial, plants and like, ions and sunshine. But how we distill it just down to grounding is there's a grounding pad. The pad is either grounded to the earth directly or it's sham grounded. The patient does not know if the cord is actually going to go directly to and connect with the earth or not. So the patient doesn't know if they're grounded, and the researcher looking at and assessing mood or assessing cortisol or assessing blood pressure or heart rate, they do not also know if the patient is grounded or not. So we really know it is just the contact between the human body and the electrons from the earth that is causing this effect. And in those studies, yes, mood is significantly improved in less than an hour. And there's a lot of reasons why. Grounding has been shown to decrease inflammation, and inflammation is directly correlated with depression. So inflammation depresses our brain. It actually is a motivational impairment. When you're depressed, you don't feel like doing anything. That's because that inflammation actually directly decreases dopamine in our brain. And tell me if I'm like getting a little bit too specific. I think your listeners probably want to know this is grounded in real medical literature. So grounding decreases the exact same inflammatory cytokines that go into our brain and depress our brain and decrease dopamine. So we need more studies to back this up, but it's into logical sense that if we're decreasing those inflammatory cytokines through grounding, we're probably giving our brain a natural dopamine boost. So that's why you can feel your spirits lift, and it's not in your head. It's a right. Clinical result. And then there's so many other things with anxiety, like racing heart, like panic. I use grounding before public speaking because I really do hate public speaking. It makes me so anxious. And so it does support our heart function, our heart rate variability. There's just so many things. And, you mentioned sleep, and sleep and anxiety are very intimately related. 1 extra hour of sleep significantly decreases anxiety. So just by boosting sleep, which we could go into next if you want, grounding can help. So there's a lot of different ways grounding helps with anxiety and depression. But and we've got tons of studies to show all the different aspects of how it can help.
And so I talk a lot about, women are dealing with men, everybody. We're dealing with stress. Everyone seems very, very stressed out. And our diurnal cortisol patterns are lopsided. We're supposed to have this spike in cortisol in the morning, and then it's supposed to, gradually go down during the day. And then our melatonin comes out, and then we get into sleep. But our circadian rhythm is off, right? And we're not getting enough daytime light or darkness at night. So can you kind of talk about the effect of grounding on cortisol specifically? Because I talk a lot to our listeners about the effect of sunlight on melatonin and how that's a process that starts in the morning. It's not just, oh my gosh, it's an hour before bed, I better start focusing on my melatonin, and then I take my gummies, and then game over. So can you talk about kind of the cortisol melatonin relationship?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. So yes, there are double-blinded placebo-based studies showing that grounding totally normalizes nighttime cortisol. So like you said, the thing with sun boosting melatonin and then earth decreasing cortisol is it does have to be in tandem. Like you said, it really has to be this
dance. I mean,
if you're not grounding to the earth outside, if your cortisol is through the roof, I don't care how good your sun exposure is. Sun exposure is essential, but it will not override high cortisol. So I could take 20 milligrams of melatonin and I could get first morning sun and I could be outside all day. If my cortisol, if I'm wired, if I'm fight and flight, my cortisol is through the roof, I cannot melatonin myself enough to get restorative sleep.
Right.
So you really do have to add grounding in. Grounding has been shown to 100% of patients normalize cortisol, not 90%, not 85%, not 99%, 100% of patients who were grounded for, I think it was a 2-month period. So they were grounding daily for a 2-month period. They weren't continuously grounded for 2 months, but daily grounding for 2 months. All their entire cortisol pattern, not just at night, but during the day, completely normalized. Now you give your body a fighting chance for hopefully the natural sun, the natural melatonin to to then allow you to fall into natural sleep. But I don't think if your cortisol is wacky, that it's possible to just address it through sun exposure or melatonin supplementation or anything like that. So if you're the kind of person where, they've followed you and they really understand the importance of sun, and they have a light box, or they're taking and they're like, why is this not working for me? Probably the cortisol is high, and that is the missing piece, is that grounding. And I mean, there's just so many different medical studies showing that grounding normalizes cortisol. And if you want, I can go into what I think we know of why that is so with the electrical output of the earth.
Please. Can we talk resonance?
So the earth is electrical. It has an electrical output, the Schumann resonance, and it also has another electrical output called the Carnegie curve, which tells us what time of the day it is and also what season we're in. It's elliptical for annually, and it's got a daily pattern. And that's why if you're grounding it, with the sun exposure, timing probably matters more than with grounding. Grounding, I could sleep grounded at night, or I could go in the morning and just have a coffee outside. I could go on my lunch break from my office park and just go outside and hold a leaf on a tree for 10 minutes. That Carnegie curve ensures that my body is being informed what time of the day it is. So all of that will help my sleep. So if I can only ground while when my kids were younger, if I'm waiting for the school bus to drop them off and I'm just standing there and I slip off a shoe for a minute, that helps my sleep. Or if it's right before bed and I get grounded in a bath, because of the laws that make sure that our water tanks are grounded, that your bath is filled with grounded water. So even if I can't go outside all day long, then I for sure am taking the time to make a 10-minute bath. So I'm grounded in my home, in the comfort of my home. I'm getting clean and I'm getting ready for bed. My muscles are relaxing, and that grounding lets me sleep better that night. So the Carnegie curve ensures it doesn't matter when I'm grounded. It's just that I need to be informed, and it just resets me to the time zone I'm in, which is why jet lag grounding is a great treatment for jet lag. And it's kind of how it was originally discovered, is people, traveling and figuring out, wow, if I connect to the earth in the new time zone I'm in, I actually sleep so much better that very first night, because that's how immediate the effects can be. So
absolutely. I mean, when I travel, I absolutely ground before and I ground after.
And you're informing your body. Where am I on the earth? What time is it? What time zone am I in? And what season am I in?
Because guess what? The one place where our body does not know where it is when we're 34,000 feet.
Exactly. It's disorienting. Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So we have to kind of, our responsibility is to inform our body. And, that's
the earth is an electrical output. It's nothing to do with man-made AC electricity that powers your light bulbs. It is before electricity, before anything was ever invented by humans.
Right.
There's this it's very gentle, which is why man-made, electrical exposures will override it, unfortunately, which is why you already mentioned about light, blue light, it overrides it. The earth's hum is gentle. It's tens of thousands of times more gentle than like artificial man-made electrical impulses. This gentle hum. You had mentioned the Schumann frequency, the Schumann resonance. That's this constant heartbeat that will give you health benefits no matter when you touch the earth. And then it's that Carnegie curve that sort of informs you day and night. And that's always there. And so our body, we can't think of as a coincidence that our entire body uses DC, that natural DC energy, which is what the earth is like a battery pulsing out with. That is how my heart is beating. That is how my brain thinks. When your doctor takes your EKG and it does the, infamous little heartbeat pattern, that's looking at the DC output of your heart.
Right.
If I am trying to rule out a stroke, or I get a sleep study and it's looking at, all those leads when they look at brain patterns, it's looking at the DC energy output of my brain to make sure it's working well. Same thing if you're doing muscle strength testing, any kind of electrical surveillance. And it's just funny to me because I went through medical school and we learned all the different ways we can use electrical impulses to make sure the body's working well. But never did we ever talk about it in terms of like preventive care or actually touching the earth or grounding for healing. We just did it to look at disease. And that's basically that's just in a nutshell what our current medical model is. Absolutely. I'm going to look at an EEG to rule out a stroke, but I'm not going to make sure I ground every day to make sure my brain is less stressed. I'm going to look at an EKG to see if I've had a heart attack, but I'm not going to ground every day with that same electrical impulse to make sure that my heart rate variability is nice and healthy and I prevent the heart attack in the first place. So I went through conventional medical school and I learned how very conductive the body was. And I graduated and I still was not informed on how we do maintenance for that electrical system, just how we troubleshoot with electrical monitoring. So that's where you're coming in to educate people as like, let's not wait for that heart attack or stroke.
Of course.
use the natural electrical impulse of our bodies and connect it with the source of that, which is our earth. And I mean, it makes sense, but now also we can say we're not just guessing. We've got over 50 years of double-blinded medical studies showing what you already know and what you're speaking about.
Right. And it is always astounding to me, when I was kind of out of breath and I went to my cardiologist and, so they do an EKG and I'm
Yeah.
watching it. And then, but there was no conversation about
None.
my
And
connection to
if
Earth.
anybody on earth knows that your heart is electrical, it's your cardiologist. If
Right.
anybody in medicine, in conventional medicine, knows that your
Right.
heartbeat is 100% dependent and would use paddles to resuscitate your heart with electrical impulse. He knows how conductive it is, and he knows it's an electrical functioning organ. So it's so silly, but I
I
mean,
know. And I have this appointment and, I put on my Hokas with my 3-inch heel and
yes,
I walked out and
yeah,
there I was
yes.
back again.
Yeah, so it's
Um,
just, I don't know when we'll embrace, I like to call it conductive medicine or conductive health. I'm in the middle of writing my second book, and it's going to be about that. My first book was about, just a practical guide, like touching the earth outside. But my second book's going to be about, like, why are we not making this a field of medicine? And so just like what you said, like, there's no reason every cardiologist on earth wouldn't want to use that healing modality for maintenance and prevention.
Right. Right. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only mom that will take a shoe off and look really weird.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, well, first off, on the Schumann resonance, I call it, it's kind of the Earth's heartbeat.
Yep.
And I was so fascinated to learn that my brain alpha waves, the 7.82 hertz, are the same as the Earth. So it intuitively, we are designed to be connected to the ground. I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean, we didn't, like, our human body earth suits didn't, like, evolve in a bubble. I mean, we are on the earth, and every living thing, plant, animal, human, is even just in your one little lifespan, you've grown up bathed in that resonance of the Schumann frequency. And in fact, when we leave that resonance, you get not only circadian rhythm disturbance, obviously, but you also get a lot of mental illness, which is why, like, astronauts have to have a Schumann frequency resonator on board to mimic it, because your body starts shutting down. It doesn't work well without it, because it's only known that it's our mother's heartbeat of, like, the earth. And I mean, I know that sounds super woo-woo, but just on an electrical level, our body doesn't know what to do without it. That is the hum of our entire existence since we were in our mother's womb and for our entire life. So, it's absolutely necessary. And without it, like, none of our organ systems function well. Right. So even though we're in the hum of it, so the earth puts out this potential that we can measure, which is the Schumann frequency. But when we're ungrounded, we're in the hum of it, which is great. But without the direct contact, it doesn't turn into a current that goes into our body. And that's why grounding is so powerful, because when you make direct contact, it goes from being measured in volts as, like, a potential, like a battery. It goes into a current. Now, this is an electrical exchange going into my body, and the relief in every single organ system, which is then documented in medical studies now with being double blinded, whether you're grounded or not. And it's the contact, it's the current, it's the changing that potential into a natural electrical current running into my body from the earth that puts my body in that healing state. And like you said, that natural reset that our brain needs, you can get it 3 ways. You can get into that frequency by grounding. That's the easiest way, because I can be multitasking. I can be anxious, and I can still, with doing nothing other than direct contact with the earth, my brain will go into that healing alpha brainwave pattern. You can do it with prolonged meditation, which I've never been able to do because I cannot. I'm talking about if you're meditating for hours, you can get your brain to be so calm but aware in that healing state where your brain goes into a healing pattern of the same resonance. So grounding, meditation, and deep restorative sleep, which is why sleep is so important. So even ungrounded, your brain, when it goes into that reset, when it goes into healing, it goes into that alpha brainwave pattern. So if you can't take a nap and you're not getting good sleep and you're anxious and you're not a pro meditator, what's the easiest way to put your brain into a healing reset? Grounding.
Absolutely.
Literally. Nothing.
I'm a terrible meditator, and I know it's so offensive to good meditators.
Yes, same.
Because I know I should take the time, and I'm getting there. I'm trying, and I know the importance of it. But it was interesting what you said about astronauts too, because the research on that is that astronauts do not fare well
Yes.
after they've been in space. I mean, they
100%.
just
Yeah.
don't do well because
Yeah.
their bodies have been so disconnected from the Earth.
Yeah.
And then you talked about babies. I know this research is very new, but I was fascinated to learn that babies in the NICU have had more successful outcomes. They're actually trying to ground them in the
Mhm.
NICU, which I think is amazing because they're sitting in blue lights, which I don't understand
Mhm.
part. But tell
Mhm.
me about the grounding piece and what they're learning.
Yeah, so there was a study, it was published just a couple of years ago, like you said, relatively new, where they grounded babies in the NICU, which is why you know that this is not a placebo effect because this baby is not thinking that they're totally vulnerable. They're the most vulnerable humans on the planet. They shouldn't have been born yet. It's premature for them to be breathing air. They're digested. They can't regulate their own body temperature. Their heart is very immature. And so we have them in incubators to keep them warm, to monitor their heart rate, to make sure they're getting fed, through an IV because you have all their systems are immature. And grounding those electrical systems boosted their heart rate variability and their vagal tone
Mm.
by about, I think it was 67%. I think that's the exact that's a two-third boost, and that is what they use in premature infants to predict survivability is vagal tone and heart rate variability. So we use that after like a heart transplant. We look at heart rate variability that predicts if that heart is going to work well and if it's going to be a long-term success. And also after like a massive heart attack, you look at heart rate variability. Is that heart functioning well? Is it healthy? And so to be able to hook these babies up in this very like man-made yucky environment of man-made EMFs and like you said, incubators. And I mean, they literally have a power strip of with all the stuff plugged in right next to them. And it's just a really toxic environment, but it's necessary because, they're not going to likely to survive on their own when they can't regulate their body temperature and they need to be fed and all that stuff. So it's a necessary, just hopefully a temporary place, but they're very, very vulnerable. And so it cannot possibly be placebo effect that their markers of survivability improve by almost 70% just by being grounded. And we're talking about 40 minutes of grounding. We're not talking about they were grounded around the clock. It was a 40-minute grounding. And when they became ungrounded, the heart rate variability and the vagal tone reversed. So if you're vulnerable, if you're trying to heal, if you want to put your body in a healing state, you do want to be grounded.
Right. And I'm a big believer too. I'm trying to eliminate the chaos of health, and everyone wants to track this and track that. And so if we know that grounding helps your heart rate variability, then just get outside. You don't need to necessarily be tracking it all the time. I do think there are situations where obviously for medical reasons you want to know, what your parameters are. But the best thing is just get outside, get in the ground, connect to earth. And I think that's why people say, oh, I'm just going to get outside. And what do
Oh,
you
yeah.
do when you get outside? So in your house, you have this AC electric current.
Yeah.
Outside is a DC electric current, and you
Yeah.
run on a DC electric current. You
Yeah.
run on the same current that the earth does. You do
Mhm.
not run on the current that's inside a house. But that's how we live. And, 85% of people are spending their days indoors. So we're actually connecting to the wrong electrical circuit, and
Right.
then we end up going to the cardiologist and saying, what's wrong with my heart? Well, oh, by the way, you know,
Yeah.
you need to
That's
fix
why it's
AC.
not a coincidence that all of the like resort destinations, all the things you do to give your body that reset, they all around grounding, beach,
Yes.
lakeside, going out on the
Right.
water, taking a swim, looking at the sunrise, going out walking in the morning dew, getting that breath of fresh air. And then even indoors, the two things that most people can think of that they're like, okay, I feel a little bit better. You're having an argument with your spouse, but you wash the dishes and your hands are under that running water, or right before bed, you're frazzled, you're like, got your to-do list going and you take a hot bath. And
Yeah.
in both situations, you are actually not probably aware of it, but you're grounding your body and you're like, gosh, that feels so, I do feel so much better. And it could just be as little as 10 minutes doing that. And yeah, so it's not, even if you're totally unaware of grounding, you're probably seeking out grounding to give yourself, a little bit of a reset without even realizing it.
Right. And I always say, I mean, my squinters or whoever I call the people that follow Squint, but the squinters, morning sun, barefoot, facing east, getting sun in your eyes and on your skin, grounded to the earth. It's those two together. Those are the essentials. And they're this dance that your body needs. And you need both. You need to be grounded. It's not just about sun. It's about grounding with sun.
Let me tell you about this interesting study that I think you'll find interesting because there's a lot of advocates for sun. So I'm going to counterbalance to that with being an earth advocate. And it's not to take away the importance of the sun at all, but it's to show how very important the earth is in contrast. So we're talking about all these studies that are relatively new, but honestly, the study I'm going to talk about now is from the 1970s. So it's not that new. We've known the importance of the earth for a long time. And the Carnegie curve was first named, it's called the Carnegie curve because it was named in the 1920s when they took a boat around the earth and measured it all into different time zones of the earth. So really, this has been a century now of us understanding the importance of the earth. So if I had to choose between getting that sun exposure, if I could only do one or grounding, I would personally choose the grounding. And again, not to minimize the sun, but because grounding is underrepresented, let me just tell you, back in the 70s, there was a scientist who built 2 bunkers underground. They were both shielded from the sun. They were underground, so they had, artificial lights in there. If the people who lived there wanted to turn the light on to designate day and then go to sleep at night, but they had no connection to what the actual sunrise and sunset was. So it was an artificial bunker. And then one of those bunkers was also shielded from the earth. So there was no communication of that natural hum of the Schumann frequency, no Carnegie curve letting them know. So both didn't totally keep a 24-hour rhythm. So yeah, the sun's super important. I'm sure they had shallow sleep. I'm sure their melatonin was terrible. But none of the people who were shielded just from the sun became completely desynchronized. They maintained 20 hours for a day, 12 hours, their rhythm was still in a day-night pattern, even though it wasn't perfect. Every single person in that experiment who became totally desynchronized to day and night, like they might think a day was 2 hours and that might have felt like a whole 12 hours to them. And then they maybe slept for 36 hours and they just thought it was, and they monitored that by obviously monitoring the people in there that were living there. They lived there for a month. I cannot even imagine. You could not pay me,
No way.
But
No way.
all the ones who became completely desynchronized were in the ones that were shielded from the Earth's energy. And when they reintroduced using those Schumann frequency generators, the Earth's frequency back into the bunker, even without the sun exposure, they became somewhat resynchronized, not completely. I mean, they're not feeling their best for sure, but they resumed a rough 24-hour pattern. So again, obviously we need the sun for so many things, not just for our human health, but so that we have plants, so that we have oxygen, I'm not taking away the absolute 1,000,000% complete necessity of our proximity to the sun and exposure to the sun. However, it's because it goes hand in hand a lot of times with people saying like, oh, I feel better outside. They always attribute it to the sun. And I'm just saying that
but they're bare feet at the beach.
Right. And or in the body of water or whatever.
Right.
And over 50 years ago, we found that to stay in a 24-hour rhythm, you have to be in concert with the Earth's electrical output. You have to be. Right. So a lot of people can fix the sun and they even invent, light box and, ways around it. But they're not introducing grounding. And so definitely if you have a follower who has implemented only half of your suggestions and is frustrated, oh my gosh, the other half, exactly what you're saying. Like, I do truly feel like I think you could survive in an artificial, unfortunately, you wouldn't feel your best in an artificial indoor environment if you were grounding, and didn't have sun exposure. I don't think your health would survive if you had the sun exposure, but absolutely zero grounding and we're completely like in the spaceship, but you could get a little bit of, I don't know, saying like, I definitely think between the two, the grounding is the most important aspect of health. Right. Just for our human bodies, not for
isn't it? I mean, it's a physics equation, right? It's a photoelectric effect. So we actually can get sun because we need electrons, to use the sun. So without electrons, we can't properly use the sun. So they have to go together.
Have to.
I have a question for you, just in terms of kind of more practical applications.
Yeah.
Because, we're talking about, people going into space, but let's just talk about every day,
yes.
like what you do. And I'm a big believer, like you get up, you do not check your phone first thing, you get outside, you get connected to the earth. As for if you're running off to the office, if you're running to work, if you're running to a meeting, running to school, just get just a few minutes grounded,
right.
Reset. So what do you do? A lot of people say to me, oh, I don't have time. I can't take my socks and my shoes off. So what are some other very easy, practical outdoor ways that people can ground? without maybe
I would
necessarily.
agree with that. It is a lot harder to ground through your feet, and everyone's like, go barefoot. I'm like, well, I kind of work, and I also live in a city, so
Right.
I'm not, there's spit, right, and needles. So,
Right.
and also, even if it was nice and clean, I don't, right before bed necessarily, I don't want to wash my feet again, or if it's really cold, my feet are going to get frostbitten. I almost always just focus on hands or water. Like if I'm in, right after this, I'll probably go wash my hands in the bathroom, and I'll just get a couple minutes of grounding just while I'm washing my hands, because I always think that's good for hygiene anyway. But hands are so much easier, even in the cold, to keep one hand touching something outside. Sorry, this is my
I see your notes.
Sorry, but I'm not into the digital, so I'm like,
no, I love that. I
But
mean,
anyway,
let's bring back 8th grade. We'll be so much healthier.
I'm the person in the grocery store with the Post-it note where it's actually written on a piece of paper.
Me too.
But hands are so much easier because it doesn't matter if it's dirty. I'm going to go in and wash my hands and get more grounding while I'm washing my hands anyway. And if it's cold, I can keep one hand in a pocket, even with a little microwave pocket warmer, or the little pocket warmers you can have, and I can let one hand get, and then I can switch them, switch. And so I can get a lot of grounding in through my hands, even in the cold, even if it's not the cleanest environment. And then I'm going to, wash my hands inside and get grounded too. So it doesn't have to be the ground. It doesn't have to be the grass. The reason grass, and people say walk barefoot, is because grass is a little mini plant. It's got its roots in the earth. So because it's alive, just like I said, every cell in our body is grounded. That's, because of the blood and the plasma, all of it's conductive. Same with the plant cells, the sap, all of it. If it's living and rooted in the earth, it's grounded. So when you're walking on grass, you're walking on microplants, but the same is true for the tallest trees. So another thing I do to get grounded is I have a little second story, teeny tiny little balcony, and there is a plant, it's a pear tree, where one of the branches just drapes over onto my balcony. And so even if that's all I get for a few minutes, I'll hold that tree. I'm not anywhere near the earth. I'm not down on the earth at all. I'm touching a leaf on a tree, and the same would be true on the tallest tree. So you could be hiking, you could have your hiking shoes on and be totally insulated. And people think they're outdoorsy, but they're still not grounded because they're not actually contacting the earth. But I always tell hikers, every time you stop and get a water break, you just touch a leaf.
Yes.
Even in the winter, pine needles, those the version of leaves for the pine trees, those will ground you. So think hands and think trees. And then if you're in an urban setting, think hands still, but think metal. So when I go out to my car, when I go into work, and when I leave work, there is a little metal signpost for the handicap parking space. So I'll just put my hand on that for a minute, take 3 deep breaths. That's what I recommend. If you really have no time, grounding and 3 deep breaths, that is long enough to show that your muscle tension releases, that your brainwave patterns shift, and that your vagal tone gets a little bit of a micro boost. More is better. But if that's all
I'm in the middle of New York City, and Central Park is 15 blocks away, and I'm walking to work, but there's going to be some kind of sign that's metal that's grounded, because it has to be grounded. So just to hold on to that sign just for a few minutes.
Because the thing is also, all sidewalk allows grounding through as well. So any signs that are anchored into sidewalk, any trees that are growing out through, even if it's concrete, because the roots will get down to the earth below, all water. So even water features I've tested, in the middle of the biggest city that's near me, just the little water fountains and stuff. You can put your finger in, and I've tested it with my grounding test meter. Those are grounded. Flag poles are grounded. And even the poles that you hit the button to cross, like a crosswalk, while pushing the button, I'm grounded. And I've tested with my ground test meter. So no one has to know what you're doing. If you're just waiting to cross the street, you just put your hand on, or you be the one that pushes the button and just leave your hand there for, take 3 deep breaths. You're grounded that entire time. So even in the most urban of settings, you can totally be grounded directly to the earth outside without using any grounding tools at all.
I love that. I'm going to be the nice person that pushes the button for everybody.
Yes, there you go. It's not
so the question that I'm inevitably going to get, as the weather gets colder, is what do you do in the snow? So if you wanted to ground in your feet, I mean, you mentioned pine needles, so I'm going to touch the pine trees and just kind of, probably it's more of a hand moment in the winter. But if I really wanted to ground, is it moving the snow away? Can I ground through the snow?
So a couple things. I won't do this because I have that Raynaud's disease. It's so painful. My feet will clamp off and I'll get frostbite. But I've had lots of people say they take a hot cup of water out and pour it on the ground, and they stand there and they can get good 10 minutes out standing there barefoot. I don't know why they want to do that.
On the snow?
Yeah, right on the snow.
Oh, excellent.
And when snow is wet, if it's wet snow, if you can make a snowball, then you're grounded through it. If it's dry powder, so dry, then it's insulatory. Like anything so dry, like our hair,
Right.
you're not going through. So if it's dry powder, then you want to look for those pine trees, or you want to pour a bucket of hot water or whatever and make it slushy. And then you'll ground. You can ground through snow. I just am not willing to do it, but you absolutely can. And that holds true even in the heat of sand. You want damp sand, because although rocks and concrete, sidewalk, and sand is just mini rocks, allow grounding through, if you add moisture, it makes it highly conductive. Whereas if it's very, very thick and there's no moisture at the bottom of that, it's a chance you're not grounded, because it becomes insulatory, because it's just so dry. But that's another part of our human design, because it's not a coincidence that our feet have the highest density of sweat glands. So we're constantly adding sweat with electrolytes and moisture. So our body by design is meant for you to stand on a dry surface like sand or like a sidewalk. And that in and of itself might not be super conductive if it's very dry, but then stand there long enough and your feet have added moisture. So it will become grounded. So again, it's just a beautiful human design where you can't help but be grounded if you give it a minute, if you give it a chance, basically.
It's really amazing. I mean, I think that the sweat glands on our hands and feet is fascinating to me.
And,
I mean, it's evolution at its best. Just our body is perfectly designed to connect to nature and this unlimited supply of electrons that are right outside. We just don't know. So it's just that win-win: getting outside, getting grounded, getting sun, and turning your body on. Question for you. I had seen some research study, and then we'll kind of close up because I know we're getting close on time, but there was a research study on Alzheimer's and grounding. I'm just curious because Alzheimer's, I mean, it's what I worry about every day. And we're all kind of experiencing this brain fog and like, oh, I'm forgetting, and I've gotten a lot better because I've made changes in my life around sun and grounding. But I mean, I was at a point where I literally couldn't transfer, a code from my computer to my phone. I couldn't remember
brain fog,
digit code long enough. And I
100%.
Something.
There's so many layers to this because so I have published multiple, at least 4 or 5 by now, medical studies, which I have a list of those on my website if anyone wants to directly read it for themselves, but on the neurological benefits of being grounded specifically. And do we think it's a coincidence that our brains sit in an electrolytic fluid, that cerebrospinal fluid? It's literally its bath. It's literally an electrical solution that instantly becomes grounded when we're touching with just our pinky or our toe. Our cerebrospinal fluid becomes grounded, and then our little electrical brain is sitting in that and becomes instantly grounded. And there's so many different ways. We started at the beginning talking about how it decreases inflammatory cytokines. Inflammatory cytokines is what's giving us that brain fog. So being indoors, being separate from the earth, being around all of the man-made EMFs, it's giving inflammation to our brain. It's depressing our brain, and it's giving us brain fog. And there's lots of different ways that medical studies have shown that grounding gives a cognitive boost. So there's a couple that I can think of right off the top of my head. There was a study showing that people, and just very much like you recommend, people who walked outside grounded in the mornings, in this study, it was 40 minutes. Now, it could be 5 minutes. It just happened to be they chose 40 minutes. So I don't know. It could be 5 minutes. That would be an effective minimum dose. We don't know. But in this medical study, people walked outside grounded barefoot for 40 minutes for 1 month. And they scored so much better on cognitive exams, on memory, on recall, and then not just on their own, reporting, but also being evaluated by neurologists and completing these studies at the beginning and at the end. And then not just that self-report, but looking at functional MRI, literally putting them in an MRI at the beginning before they started grounding, and in the middle, and then at the end of the month of grounding, and their actual brain markers of brain stress were reduced in their physical brain on functional MRI. So that is just 1 month of doing exactly what you said, which is going outside and connecting to the earth. And so this was then, the controls were people who did the same path, the same amount of time, the same exact place. So they all met at the same place, and half the people were wearing sneakers. And the people who were wearing sneakers did not have the changes, the decreased brain stress on functional MRI, and they did not have the same boost in their cognitive tests that they were given. They had improvements in mood, because probably from the sun, and probably from better sleep because of the sun, right? But they didn't have the brain benefits that grounding gives you. And then the other control was people who use that 40 minutes to study or work. And you would think that those people would do better at work because they got an extra 40 minutes to prep for their conference or to answer emails or whatever. No, they had the worst on the functional brain scans, they had increased stress, decreased concentration, decreased recall, decreased everything, and all their parameters of health went down. So I was, at the time that study came out a couple of years ago, my son was still in college, and I said to him, if you're craving for an exam and you are stressed out, and you have 30 minutes, man, you better just go outside and don't think about a thing. Just look up.
I say this all the time.
All the time. Yeah. I don't want you even to study. What's done is done.
Yes.
You're going to do better. You're going to think better, and you're going to get a better grade. If you just do not cram. It's not worth it. You're going to do worse.
I agree.
The study shows.
We live in San Diego. My kid has go jump in the ocean.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That extra 30 is
heck yeah.
Get those electrons flowing, get those wavelengths. Get that frequency, connect to the earth. And that's a huge bonus.
And I didn't want to ignore, you specifically asked about Alzheimer's, but I went into all that to show that, we do know that our brain works better when we're grounded routinely. But there was one study so far, now grounding isn't funded because it's free, right? So there's no pharmaceutical company funding it. So there's not a ton to every little disease that you want. But luckily, so there was the one in the NICU, and now there is one in Alzheimer's patients where the patients were not aware if they were grounded or not. And what they showed was that sleeping grounded improved their sleep quality, and not subjectively because they said, oh, I feel like I slept better. But on the Pittsburgh Index Sleep Quality Scale, they actually improved their sleep. And it was a significant amount. I don't remember the exact amount, and I don't want to misquote the study. But again, you can find all grounding medical studies on my website. I keep a running list of all of them. But yes, it improved sleep quality, which is huge when you're dealing with organic brain disease. Sleep quality is the first thing to suffer, from autism to all the way to, dementia. Preserving sleep quality is one of the best things you can do to preserve your brain function. Sure. And something has been shown to do that. And that was a double-blinded. So the one where they were walking, it was blinded in the sense that they had controls, but obviously, if you're wearing shoes or not in that study. But it was also a very impressive study because they relied on MRI imaging and really concrete measures. This one was very impressive because they didn't know if the grounding mat that was on their bed was actually grounded or not. And the researchers didn't know which of the patients, and the patients themselves didn't know. So these were real, very accurate reports of sleep quality improving, even in advanced Alzheimer's patients.
That's amazing. And just day to day, the conversation with people is always sleep, and sleep, a lack of sleep is kind of this gateway to Alzheimer's and disease, because sleep is when we restore. Yep. And I even notice, in my sleep patterns, they're directly correlated to how much grounding I have.
Yep.
How much, I'm much more sensitive to Wi-Fi and man-made EMFs than some people. And I'm aware of that. And I notice, certainly travel, like being in a Wi-Fi tube on an airplane, all these things, but even just living in our communities, because we're exposed to so much more. And so our cells need grounding that much more, because we need that much more regulation of our nervous system, because we have so many of these man-made EMFs. So we need to balance technology with nature.
1,000,000%. Yep.
And look at the trees. Look, this sounds so hippy dippy, but trees are grounded and they're in the sun all day. And they're doing great, most of them.
Yeah. And there's even double-blinded because it's plants, but medical studies showing that plants respond to being grounded. They don't know if their tray is grounded or not. And they not only grow taller, they get more leaves, they bloom, they have more blooms, and the blooms last longer. So to me, I don't understand why, just like I'm confused why a cardiologist isn't recommending grounding. Why in a hotel industry, if I'm spending millions of dollars on a floral arrangement or plants in a hotel, why am I not grounding all those? Because they last 2 and 3 times longer. And then the translation is, obviously, I'm not going to get twice as tall if I'm grounding, but my health is at least twice as good if I'm grounding. So the human translation is, we're not going to bloom more and grow taller, but our health is much more vibrant when we're grounded. So yeah, it's anything living. You can see there's tons of studies showing improvement in health from grounding.
That's amazing. So we're going to have, I think all your research is amazing. We're going to put it in the show notes. Anyone who wants to read it, I highly go to her website, learn. But if there's anyone who wanted to learn more about this, do you do retreats, or is there anybody who just kind of wanted maybe to be with, have a physician on hand and kind of learn this in that way? Do you have anything like that?
I do. I have just recently, in the past 2 years, started offering in-person grounding retreats, because some people just want that. Like, I want to do it with you, and a weekend's enough, because I'm going to tell you every trick, you're going to feel a difference. in the 48 hours when you leave, when you've been grounding on and off for those 48 hours than you have ever felt before. So if you want to do it with me in person, that'd be amazing. I do have grounding retreats, but really it's so simple. It's something you can do literally today after you listen to this podcast. I try and give people like just a practical tip, and it's very going to overlap with what you say, which is, wake up, get outside, get your feet on the earth and face, look towards the sun. That's amazing advice. If you want to add more grounding in, the other tips I say is to find just one little patch of sidewalk that's safe near where you live. Because no matter where you live, you probably can find one little, whether it's your front door stoop or it's, in this particular street corner where you feel safe grounding that you can do year round, or find one favorite tree that you can just touch a leaf on. And again, it could be for just 3 deep breaths, but the one by my mailbox, or the one outside my office park, or the one where I take my lunch break, or the one in front of the supermarket, or just find your favorite tree, and that's your grounding tree, and you're going to visit it year round. Another thing you can do instead is grounding is hugely beneficial to metabolism. We didn't have time to talk about it this time. Metabolism and digestion and weight management. So one thing I like to say is if you could possibly just choose one meal a day to eat outside, you're going to notice an enormous difference. So whether that's your breakfast coffee or you made dinner inside, you don't have to cook it outside, but you just go sit on your front door stoop and you're grounded and you eat your dinner outside. Even if it's just once a week, studies have shown that makes a difference. And then the last thing, if you've gone the whole day and you really just couldn't fit any grounding in, please try and take a bath. Just if you could take a 10-minute bath, that's your 10 minutes grounding right there. And then you can do that in any season, even that was the other thing I was going to mention in the winter. A warm bath always feels really good.
That's great. And I love this too, because I think like in any health modality, it's consistency over perfection.
Yeah.
And I think we're in the wellness race. Everyone, becomes so obsessed with, I have to do this workout and this diet. And it's not like that. It's this very balanced, gentle connection to the earth. It's not doing the hardest workout or overtraining. It's really just getting back, connecting to the earth. It's a lot easier.
Feel like a relief, right? It's what did you say?
Well, we're making it too hard, right?
Yes. It should feel like a relief when when you're doing it right, when it just should feel like a relief, like taking a bath feels like a relief, like going to the beach feels like a relief, like seeing the sunshine feels like when the sun comes out from behind a cloud, you're like, oh, it should feel like a relief. It shouldn't be this horrendous, alchemy that you have to create. No, that's stress. That's not a relief. So I love how you're simplifying for your listeners and your followers into something that feels so right that you can just prove it to yourself, really. You don't have to read the medical literature. You can, but you don't have to, because, people who are listening to what you're saying feel that difference. It feels like a relief. It feels simplified and clear.
Right.
So I love it.
And part of it is kind of erasing or just kind of divorcing yourself from all that stuff just for a while. And then just try the 4 things that you said, just kind of implement it slowly, and just kind of reconnect. And then after you reconnect, then you kind of feel it. And it is intuitive, like you said. And
it's really hard to do that. Like, don't underestimate. It is hard because all the man-made electrical things are meant and designed to be addictive.
Of course. And convenient.
Billions of dollars and so many years fine-tuning this to addict you. So really it is hard, but it should feel like a relief to put it down. It should feel like a relief to get that sunshine. It really should feel like relief. And if your listeners do that consistently and say, give it a month, they should also get the feedback, even from their own physician, that, oh my gosh, your blood pressure. So studies have shown that grounding improves blood pressure by about 20%. That's the only thing they did different, or whatever it might be. You might get a blood test result back and you're like, wow, that's better than it's ever been. And, so implementing something and then doing it enough that you get that feedback, that's kind of what keeps you motivated, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I am so grateful for you and all you are doing. The research you're doing is amazing, and that you were an MD and you're kind of transitioning to, coming to the knowledge that we've known for hundreds of years and kind of reconnecting us with really important information that actually is going to give us the results we want, because we aren't doing that well based on the numbers. And I'm not trying to be negative, but just saying that it breaks my heart when people are having heart attacks and strokes. And we're not saying that, making small changes, but they do make big differences.
Oh yeah, we kind of are. I'm saying, yes, it makes a clinical difference. Absolutely.
For sure. So,
and that's why you're so awesome, because you are getting this message out there. So thank you for doing that and inviting me here.
Well, thank you for being here. And maybe we'll do part 2, metabolism.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. I'd love to.
All right. Well, you're lovely, and thank you for all you do. I'm so grateful for it, and so is everyone listening to this podcast.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank
All
you.
right. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.